it looks like we have people are slowly but surely coming on. So again, thank y'all for joining us today. I hope everybody's week and everybody's Wednesday is being kind to them as we are fueling into August. I know people are teeing up to for school to start back and summer programs are ending and all the things. So just wanted to take a second to, for one, give y'all time to just kind of center yourselves, be present in this space, this sacred space. I would love to welcome you into this space. Feel free to settle in however you need to. We welcome you if this is your first time on the call or your first time in a while. Feel free to come off mute, say hi. We would love to hear your voice, see all the faces, but we definitely just appreciate y'all's presence. Absolutely no pressure to turn your video on or come off mute. You can also feel free to interact with us in the chat. Let us know how your week is going so far. We love to do temperature checks and just give people time to just transition into this space in the midst of all the things and all the emails and all the news that we know that we transition oftentimes into workspaces from, especially when they're virtual. It's a little hard to be more fully present, in the midst of texts that are coming through, email notifications that are coming through, and just day-to-day real life. So again, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to share space with us. We're going to take a quick minute just to give you a second of silence, just so that you can have, a second to really feel like you can transition into this space before we kick things off. So I'll give us a minute of silence, and then at 1:16 we'll officially get started. I will introduce Jason, but just want to give us a second of silence to just kind of center ourselves. And that can be taking a deep breath. If you need to close your eyes, wiggle your fingers. Okay. Thank you all for officially transitioning into this space with us. So we're just going to kick things off. And as people join the call, like Erica said, we're recording. And so this also can be something that we can share with you all later. For anybody that missed anything, we definitely want to just be respectful of the time. And so we'll get started. And if we need to, we can catch folks up in the chat later. But thank y'all for joining us. Here we have with us today Jason Sprouls joining us from the Urban Water Divisions from the Cumberland River Compact. Jason's primary job function is to manage the Root Nashville campaign. And so he'll be joining us to talk a little bit about that today, what inspired that program, and just how we can learn more, get involved, and just continue to be curious. So thank you for being in this space with us today, Jason. You have the floor, and I will keep an eye on the chat, Jason, because I know you're sharing your screen. So if any questions come up, I'll definitely let you know about all the things that's happening on my end, but feel free to take the floor.
Great. Well, thanks for the introduction, and I'm excited to be able to present with everybody and hopefully give some content that's interesting and relevant to folks. So I'm just going to jump right in and get started. So my name is Jason. I'm a certified arborist, urban forester by trade, and I work at a local water quality and water resources nonprofit in Nashville called the Cumberland River Compact. The mission is quite clear. It's to ensure clean and abundant water in the Cumberland River, and it's contributing creeks, tributaries, and waterways. So you can imagine there's a lot of sources of pollution and contamination in our local waterways. And those stem from a number of systemic issues and include sources of non-point source pollution and point source pollution. So these are the different pillars of our work that exist on a spectrum of water quality issues and land use types. I like to think that we kind of reach people in a multitude of different ways. However, the programs I'm going to be talking about are mostly in our urban waterways because I assume that's where most of us are kind of joining from, either work, live, recreate in kind of a more urban setting where some of these programs might be more relevant. So, our urban waters programs broadly serve to improve how we shepherd and steward the land to promote a more robust and holistic urban environment. There's a lot of overlapping factors that contribute to different environmental burdens that people experience in downtown environments. But at its simplest level, just know that when we develop downtown neighborhoods, we see a rise in what's called impervious surfaces. So that's pavement, roofs, driveways. They don't allow rainwater to soak into the soils that are trapped beneath. And that runoff goes somewhere else. So either into our creeks and streams directly towards the river or into a network of pipes that sometimes gets to water treatment plants, sometimes it doesn't. So, minimizing stormwater runoff is the broad goal that my division of our nonprofit seeks to address. There's two main program elements that we have that I think do a really good job of that I'm going to talk about. One is our Root Nashville urban forestry campaign, and the other is a program called Depave. So, essentially, why are trees critical components of infrastructure? I think stormwater is an abstract term that's sometimes hard to conceptualize. I'm a numbers person. I think this slide sort of speaks for itself, but just know that the act of planting a tree can really do an outsized amount of work to protect our local waterways and well-being. So a mature deciduous tree under the right conditions, just through its physical properties, can intercept 500 to 700 gallons of stormwater on its stems, leaves, and trunk annually. But more interestingly, through natural processes like evapotranspiration, trees release water through pores in their leaves, and they can release 100 gallons of stormwater on a daily basis under the right conditions. So there's cooling effects that take place, but these are literally a way of releasing stormwater back into the atmosphere and cooling the microclimate around those trees. You can imagine with some other things that you probably are familiar with, that's really important as our city becomes more and more developed. Of course, trees play a really important role in managing surface temperatures and our overall atmospheric temperatures as it relates to air quality and surface temperatures. So, a term that many of us are probably familiar with is the urban heat island effect. This is used to describe how those same paved surfaces trap the energy from the sun and slowly releases it back into the atmosphere and raises the temperature of downtown settings like Nashville. So there's disparities in daytime surface temperatures that we are subjected to the closer you get downtown. That disparity can be as wide as 10 degrees Fahrenheit at the same time of day in an area that's more wooded and naturalized versus something that's downtown. So, trees through their physical properties, they help, trap and protect, our paved surfaces from getting some of that sunlight and keeping temperatures down. But like I said earlier, that evapotranspiration releases water back out and cools the atmosphere around. They also do a lot to help filter air pollutants out of our atmosphere and trap things like nitrogen dioxide, sulfur dioxide, ozone in and on their leaf surfaces to help actually promote improved air quality as well. A big silver lining is this is a great way to save money on your air conditioning bills and reduce your energy consumption in general. So trees are a great way to really think about reducing your dependency on air conditioning and heat, and also just having a more pleasant and livable neighborhood, business, nonprofit, etc. Some of the fun stuff that's hard to measure is the benefits that trees cast onto our community. I don't think this is too surprising to folks, but visiting a tree is a really great tether between the land and time. So, for me personally, like walking by a tree with somebody from the neighborhood and they're like, that's been there for 100 years. I planted that with my grandma back in the day. It's like, wow, I'm learning something about my neighborhood. People have a great deal of care and ethic and pride around their trees. So planting trees really promotes a way for us to engage youth, our senior citizens, in sort of kind of creating a community of well-being and care that promotes stewardship of our natural resources. So planting trees can be something that's fun and brings us together, gives us something to be really hopeful about as we imagine, a yard space or an open tree lawn with trees in the future. So I think they do a lot to promote just a more healthy and well-rounded neighborhood. There's also generally a lot of safety benefits with trees, namely with driver behavior. If you imagine driving down the highway, there's no obstacles in your peripheral vision, so you have a tendency to speed up. And there's studies that have shown that a tree-lined street can reduce vehicular collisions by up to 20% and slow traffic speeds anywhere from 3 to 15 miles per hour. They're also a physical bollard that typically protects houses, pedestrians walking on the sidewalk, people using bikes from, unforeseen collisions with cars. So they're literally a measure of community safety. More and more people are also recognizing the really significant health benefits that trees have on communities as well. So, one of the first clinical studies, so this is not anything done by foresters, by clinicians like doctors and researchers. They collected in Louisville different blood biomarkers related to inflammation rates and found that in neighborhoods that had diminished tree canopy, if they planted trees in those areas over a 5-year study period, those inflammation levels actually went down. So inflammation has been linked with heart disease and cardiovascular illness. So you can really think about trees as a critical intervention for promoting community wellness and health. We did a planting project with Meharry Medical College, and I think their PA clinicians do a better job explaining this than me, but their anecdotal, belief is that, patient care starts outside of your doctor's office. And I think trees are a really great social determinant of health. So neighborhoods that have more access to a robust and healthy tree canopy also will typically have neighbors who are healthier and not subjected to things like higher daytime surface temperatures, heat stress, heat illness, improved air quality for people who might experience asthma or other breathing disorders. So there's all sorts of psychological benefits as well. People are typically happier, have improved attention rates. Children perform better in school if they've got a view shed with a window that has trees outside. So there's so many benefits that trees have on our mental and physical health that really necessitate, thoughtful planting across Nashville. That's a lot of me talking. I like to let pictures and maps do the heavy lifting for me. This is a map of most of Davidson County. And you can see this is the distribution of our tree canopy using land cover data. Nothing too surprising. The closer you get to downtown, you'll see a lower and lower tree canopy percent. Those really dark green areas are more naturalized areas, but our city is on a spectrum. So the citywide average is about 35%, but in certain neighborhoods, it's as low as 10 or 15%. And in others, it's higher if it's a more naturalized or agricultural area of the city. Inversely related to that is the distribution of impervious surfaces. So these are road networks, roofs, houses, things that don't allow stormwater to infiltrate into soils. And you can see a lot of that is especially close to the river, which is especially concerning because you can imagine all that runoff sheds right into the river. But this also, to me, as an urban forester, signals this is where it's more challenging to find room to plant trees as well. And this map is pretty inextricably linked with imperviousness, and you can see this is heat severity. So the areas that are a darker hue of red or orange are the areas in Nashville that are hotter at the same time of day as somewhere else in the city. So that disparity can be anywhere from 8 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit the closer you get to downtown. And I think a lot of us have experienced this ourselves. It's not surprising to most people. Trees and the distribution of green resources has been inextricably linked in Nashville and almost every major metropolitan area of the United States with the nefarious history of redlining. So neighborhoods that did receive a poor redlining score and were denied the opportunity to secure homeowners loans by the Homeowners Loan Corporation in the 1930s and 40s, those same disinvestments extend to the distribution of our trees. So you can see that all of these environmental hazards are not, those burdens aren't distributed equally across Nashville or other cities. And a lot of that is linked with income and racial status. So we're always working our best to kind of identify community stakeholders and partnerships to help address those disparities that exist dating back over 100 years. So, Root Nashville. I've talked a lot about the benefits of an urban tree canopy. What is Root Nashville? This is our citywide campaign to plant 500,000 1-inch caliber trees by 2050. Any tree planted that's an inch or larger counts towards that goal. The Cumberland River Compact is the day to day operational partner of our campaign to reach that goal. And you can imagine that if you want to plant 500,000 trees by 2050, you have to extend planting well outside of just the public domain. So if you wanted to plant every sidewalk, public school, or other metro owned property, you're never going to get there. So 90% of land is privately held. So our job is to plant privately owned land. So that's typically neighborhood yards, faith based institutions, nonprofits, private schools. All private property owners in Davidson County are entitled to free trees that are planted professionally by our staff at no cost. One of the great ways that people can get involved is by serving as a neighborhood planting captain. These are not tree experts, these are people who love their community, love their neighbors, and want to kind of take all this information that lives in my head and spread it across the city. So they're typically doing door to door outreach, helping us make connections, and contextualizing the benefits of trees in a way that feels relevant to their communities. So essentially, they're doing a great job spreading the word about this opportunity and lending their trust and position within their community to say, like, my name is, Miss Williams. I'm here to say that, there's free trees that you can get for your front yard. Here's how you can get more information. Get in touch with Root Nashville. You can imagine, like, I could try to do that in your neighborhood, and it comes off very differently versus somebody who really knows the dynamics and social fabric of their neighborhood better than us. So every year we have different trees to promote a diverse urban tree canopy that's resilient to climate change or unforeseen pest or disease outbreaks that could affect certain tree species. This year, we're proud to boast a mix of 7 different trees that, again, if you own a yard, if you go to church, if you have a nonprofit, you can get these trees and you just have to email me. We've got some big trees and some small trees. I start with the big trees first. Tulip poplar is one I think most people are familiar with. It's a really fast growing tree, has awesome, vibrant yellow fall color every year. It does have a flower, and it's our state tree. So if you want something that grows really fast and will get you a lot of shade, tulip poplar is really excellent at doing that, especially in full sun. We have a slower growing, sort of medium / large size tree called shingle oak. Shingle oak are really important sources of wildlife for birds, squirrels, deer. But they have a slower growth rate, incredibly strong wood, and great structure that makes them a really awesome choice for people who want a slower growing tree that will be, really resilient against things like high wind, ice, or other sort of loading factors that might subject a tree to failure. So these are a really tough as nails tree that, I would feel very confident planting, knowing that it's really strong against, our climate. The other large tree we have, this is great for people who have a really big yard, a really big church, that, especially lower slope areas that stay wet all the time. Sycamore is a really fast growing deciduous tree that reaches a really large size really fast. They have really recognizable bark characteristics as well. They have sort of a camouflaged white colored bark on them. Sometimes they're called the ghost of the woods. Historically, people who would be exploring lands in North America, they would see these trees in sort of lower sloped areas and know that there was water nearby. So they're sort of a signal and virtue of life in that way. We have some sort of medium-sized trees, one of which is river birch. Landscapers love planting these because they don't get quite as tall. They can handle a variety of soil conditions and have really showy bark characteristic. It's sort of like a cinnamon, salmon-colored, papery bark that has interesting texture year-round. We also have a really tough as nails tree called honey locust. If you're somebody who doesn't have a green thumb, or your mom doesn't have a green thumb, your dad doesn't have a green thumb, I would be, I'd implore somebody to get this tree to not grow in their yard. Honey locust can handle drought, compaction, all sorts of degraded, poor soil quality, and high heat, and they do really well. So they also have a leaf texture that's super interesting. It's sort of like a compound leaf that allows for a more filtered shade. So if you're somebody who has grass underneath and you want some wildflowers, this tree can do that for you. And we have a couple flowering trees as well. One that's really popular is always our serviceberry tree. They reach only about a size of 20 feet tall. They have really showy white flowers every year, and they do have a fruit that is edible. I like to take these and actually put them on my oatmeal every June. So they're a cool tree. And one tree that we have on the list, sort of as like a one-time only sort of thing, is a really rare native variety of of magnolia called umbrella magnolia. They are a deciduous variety of magnolia, and their leaves get anywhere from 10 to 15 inches long. They're huge. It's one of the most tropical looking trees you'll ever see. They love protected areas that get some shade. So if you don't have a lot of sunny spots in your yard, this could be a really great tree that can handle almost entire full shade. So, a lot of our trees typically go to residential properties. Anybody can order trees for a residential property by the end of August. So, if people want that link, I can drop it in the chat. But we also accept community reforestation projects on a rolling basis. So, if you're somebody who's like, I need to go and talk to my pastor, I need to go and talk to my mom who works at a nonprofit with some green space, and we want to get them some trees there. That will invite me to come make a planting plan for that stakeholder. This is a church not too far away from the village called Jackson Street Baptist Church. And this was triggered by a planting captain who goes to church there. Her name's Ms. Dot. She wanted her pastor to plant some trees, and they got about 20 trees that were entered into our watering and care program. So you can go visit those trees as a good example to see what they look like after about 3 years of growth already. Another program that we offer folks, just knowing that feedback we typically get is like, I have this big church, and the parking lot's really huge, and we don't have a lot of room to plant trees, and we want to, grow our tree canopy, minimize runoff. This is a program that was modeled in response to that need. So we have a program that can work with stakeholders to actually take areas that are underutilized, portions of asphalt, or parking areas that aren't being used, where people want to transform that into living green space. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that to kind of ramp down my presentation, and give some examples of what those projects look like. So this is a church off Hillsborough Pike called Calvary United Methodist Church. It's right by the mall. And their parking lot towards the edges where there was a lot of runoff reaching the side of the parking lot was in a state of disrepair. That runoff does put a lot of wear and tear on asphalt, so they were constantly having to restripe it, repave it, and frankly, according to them, it was only being used as temporary bus parking every few months or even as little as once a year. So they had plenty of parking. They wanted to kind of reimagine how they use their space to cater to things like outdoor prayer worship, getting youth from the church outside to do stewardship projects, and have some space to plant some flowers as well. So that triggered our staff to come in and actually transform that space. So this is sort of what it looked like before we started the project. And this is kind of what goes into the during phase. So during our planning phase, we'll actually kind of investigate, how deep is that asphalt and what are the conditions underneath, because things can vary so much from site to site. But our staff actually will come over the course of 2 to 3 weeks and handle all of the heavy machinery needed to off-haul and demolish the asphalt and revitalize the soil structure to plant trees and vegetation afterwards. So this is one of our staff members using one of those mini excavators to sort of pry back and lift the asphalt to start, getting it off site. So once the asphalt is hauled away and taken to somewhere else, we bring in healthy new soil and compost to blend it all up and improve the soil structure so that it can capture as much stormwater runoff as possible, but also be able to support the needs of our trees, shrubs, and wildflowers. And you can see to the right is a picture of what it looked like right after it was done. Typically, these projects are entered into our maintenance and care program. So if somebody's like, I want 25 trees at my church, who on earth is going to water those things? Our staff is able to water those trees at no cost to faith-based institutions. That's a weekly watering of 10 gallons per tree per week from the first week of May to the last week in September. So if watering an establishment is a barrier, that is something that we can help alleviate. A couple interesting other project examples. We did one over kind of in East Nashville near Trinity Lane. This was one initiated by a planting captain named Trinice. She knows her neighborhood really well and saw this sort of what's called slip lane in her neighborhood. So if you imagine a four-way stop and then there's a hypotenuse of a triangle, a slip lane is something that allows people to sort of skip a four-way stop, not stop, and it encourages things like speeding and collisions. So she was like, I never see anybody there. It's a waste of space. It seems super dangerous. I wish it was green space. So we worked with her to actually remove that portion of roadway that wasn't really serving the community and create space to plant a mix of 26 different fruit and nut bearing trees, so that she can invite youth into the space to do things like stewardship and care. An interesting component that she took on as well is that she had concrete pads poured with benches that had the names of deceased elders from the community, as well as a measure for youth who visit the site to be able to connect with people who used to call this neighborhood home. Um, I did want to talk broadly about our Depave initiative, as we've been working sort of at a watershed scale in North Nashville for the past 2.5 years. For anybody who isn't familiar, right off Walter S. Davis Boulevard, where it intersects with Ed Temple Boulevard, there actually is a wetland on TSU's campus. And this area in blue contributes runoff to that wetland. You may have driven by this resource hundreds of times and never actually seen it. But it is really an incredible, one of a kind natural resource that Nashville has to boast. Of course, TSU being our premier agricultural and environmental college in Nashville, oftentimes if there's a hydrology or wetlands dynamics class, students will have to like take a bus 2-3 hours away to visit a wetland. Whereas here in Nashville, our young researchers and future minds in wetland sciences, they can just cross the street and see a wetland. So this is something that's been in Nashville as an emergent wetland for the past 30 to 40 years. And it's an incredible one-of-a-kind resource that also helps protect water quality in the area, because all the runoff that gets there kind of stops and visits that wetland before it gets to the river. So there's sort of like a kidney that filters out pollutants from water, and relies on vegetation to pump it out. So these are really a powerhouse environmental resource. Interesting history for you, if you remember a time when Walter S. Davis Boulevard wasn't there. That road was put in the late 80s, early 90s. And the story is really interesting. It wasn't a wetland. It was just a small little streamway. But that stream has become a wetland because of nature's engineers, beavers. There's some anecdotal stories about after some vegetation clearing, some folks from the facilities at TSU dumped some, trees and branches in and around that stream bank. And between that and other vegetation, beavers actually dammed up parts of that streams, and it created this wetland. So since the 90s, you can actually watch this resource change and grow over time. This is the earliest satellite image you can get on Google Earth, and it's from 1997. And you can see where that sort of stream segment is right near the TSU Research Farm and Agricultural Building, and where it connects with the river. And you can slowly start to watch this thing emerge and change over time. And you can do this on Google Earth. I do it all the time. But 2010 is where you can start to actually see standing water start to stand permanently by satellite. And if you know your history in Nashville, 2010 is a year I do pick on purpose, because this is what the research farm looked like during the 2010 flood. And you can see how many, hundreds of thousands of gallons of stormwater are being trapped here before, getting upstream to, for example, Schrader Lane, Church of Christ. So this is a critical way of promoting flood resilience in North Nashville as well. 2017 is where we start to see a change in the distribution of plants in the wetlands. So a lot of the non-wetland type plants that don't like extended periods of flooding and saturated soil start to die off. And 2017 is when wetland plants start to emerge. And this is some recent imagery, and you can see how much larger this wetland is, constantly getting and growing. But it's a great resource that needs to be protected. So we've been working under a grant to mitigate stormwater runoff by depaving over 30,000 square feet of runoff that would reach the wetland. So a couple projects you can visit. Sort of the keystone project that just completed was at Pearl Cone High School, not too terribly far away from TSU. This 60,000 square foot parking lot contributes all of its runoff to a single storm drain inlet, right kind of in the bottom where there's a bioretention cell. So all of that runoff before was actually going straight to the wetland. And now on an annual basis between these deep pave areas and this permeable pavement that you can see that is lighter gray, over 1.7 million gallons of stormwater are captured on site before it would ever reach any of our natural resources. So that permeable pavement you may have seen before, it's those sort of interwoven and locked bricks that have some gravel between and allows rainfall to actually infiltrate those permeable pavers rather than just shedding off like typical asphalt. So the school didn't lose more than a couple parking spaces and in return is able to do a lot to protect our local water quality. The idea for this project itself actually came from a stormwater audit that our education team did in 2022 with students at the high school. Those stormwater audits typically encourage students to think broadly about what are the sources of stormwater runoff that are coming across their school facilities. And one of the students was like, what do we do about this parking lot? And we were like, well, dang, that's a great question. So just know that this idea sort of came from some of our students at Pearl County High School, which I think is really cool. A couple other projects you can visit if you ever visit Buchanan Street. There's a taqueria called Tio Fun. It's across the street from Slim and Huskies. This is a great example of what a modest-sized deep pave project can look like in practice. If you look at the picture that says before, you can see the parking spaces are striped awkwardly about 10 feet off of the road. So typically what was happening was people were parking and then getting double parked in. And it was just this small intervention we could make by scooting those parking spaces back and then lifting that asphalt out and creating green space. So now this is an outdoor dining area that protects people that want to sit out back, provides a little reprieve from the summer heat, and just adds a lot more visual interest and flair to the landscape for this taqueria, which is really cool. We have been recently working with a few faith-based institutions that y'all may know of. One of which is Westwood Baptist Church, which is a historic institution. Again, not too terribly far away from Meharry Medical College. They depaved over 6,000 square feet of underutilized portions of asphalt and only lost one parking space. So they had a lot of areas where we were able to create new room for trees, flowers, plants, improve traffic flow and circulation, and in exchange lose no parking services really. So this is sort of a scale. If you ever visit this church or you're familiar with it, their parking lot essentially just got a diet. You know, we kind of depaved a lot of the edges around. I forget what street that is, Almeida Street, and then there's a big new kind of green space at the bottom aspect of this parking lot where all of the stormwater runoff wants to shed off onto the street, but also to the house that's in the ministry of the church. So this is a way that we can promote some flood resilience for their housing, but also create some green space that everyone can enjoy as well. We're also doing a project with Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, which is on the other side of Pearl County High School, and that's currently underway. So if you want to visit that, that's also a great way to see our projects in action. But that's sort of the meat of my presentation. I think at this point, I'm happy to just kind of kick it to questions. If, you know, people have questions, ideas, things like that, but just mostly wanted to get this information in front of everybody so they can share it with their friends, family, and let us know if they want some trees.
Thank you, Jason. Do you mind, someone in the chat asked for the link for the residential tree, but do you mind dropping both links that people for residential churches, all the links that they would need if they're interested?
Yeah, I just did the tree for people who want to order trees for their yard. I just put that in the chat. Tree. And that deadline is the end of this month. So I'll put that in there. And then let me get the other one.
Thank you, Jason. While Jason's grabbing those links, would anybody like to come off mute just for questions for Jason or anything regarding the Cumberland River Impact or the Roots program? I'm curious, do we have anybody on the call who had a roots program like tree planted near them that they know of? I'm just curious if anybody recognized. I'm sure we all recognized quite a few. I literally just walked to the. I don't know how. I don't want to butch the name, but I know it's the new taco spot that's on
Mhm.
Buchanan. I walked past there yesterday and actually saw a hummingbird in that like area that y'all, I'm assuming that now I know y'all planted the trees in. So it's good to see and be amongst the work that that you referenced in the slide.
Yeah,
I actually met Trinice, who worked with you guys on the Meharry project. The very first village call I sat on, I met her that morning, and we had talked about her doing some work in my yard and in the community because she's one of the captains in the area. So it's just kind of all full circle for me.
that's great. Yeah, she's a
Thank you,
she's
Lakia. I'm sorry.
Trinice is one of our great dedicated captains. So I'm glad y'all have met. And I didn't mention that we did plant 150 trees for Root Nashville on Meharry's campus for their 150th anniversary. So if people need to see what the trees look like, they can just kind of get a good excuse to visit their grounds and
Yeah,
touch the
she had
trees.
told me about it. That's why I actually went to view it because she told me you guys had just finished that project. And so I actually went to view it, and she was telling me about how the native trees help with the flood zones. And we talked about my experience being here during 2010 during the flood and how it affected me. And I was telling her that um my baby wanted to plant a crepe myrtle in our yard because she's obsessed with crepe myrtles, and she was like, "Oh God, no, don't put one of those over here. That's not native." And so she went into explaining what the native trees actually do. And once she explained that, I was like, "Oh wow, this is like a really big thing." And so it just made my gardening and food as medicine project even more like a requirement for me.
Right. And I
Lakia,
mean, I
thank you
don't,
for mentioning that. I was gonna ask Jason, could you put if someone even is interested in being the person in their communities that can speak to the work. I can't remember what you said the name of the volunteer is, or the person that basically just knows the kind of fabric of the neighborhood and can maybe speak to how just how someone can get involved in learning more about that opportunity as well.
yeah, I'll put that here. We have one new captain who some people may know. His name's Poet. He lives in like the Osage Fisk area, but we definitely need more folks who call North Nashville home or really understand the neighborhood dynamics well. So if anybody would want to be a planting captain, we would be eager to get one in the North Nashville area. We
So
definitely need all the hands.
for me, that's the area that I'm targeting to do all of my work is North Nashville area by the historic HBCUs. And so that is literally the area that I'm targeting because it's the most densely populated area when it comes to the foliage.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
And
was
does
Yeah.
it
gonna
have to
say,
be an individual? Could it be an organization?
Yeah, I mean, we could have we've had an engineering firm one time have their staff kind of collectively serve as a captain. So if it's a nonprofit, that's fine too. We could outfit you with flyers and some training to help spread the word. So that would work.
yeah, Jason, I was gonna say, I'm in North Nashville, and I do know Poet, pretty well. He's a pretty well known guy. He works with several different organizers. I don't know if he's still with Equity Alliance or with someone else now. But I saw what y'all did with Jaffe and Recycling Invest in South Nashville. We had a nice, I think, new canopy of trees growing at our church, Claiborne. And so there's a nice, a good, I think it was like 12 to 16 trees over there now. And so that was great. Of course, you worked with us last year, completely helping us with the young people. So it was good to see you again when you were doing this presentation. If you do need more assistance in North Nashville, that's my home as well. So Lakia, I think even the village has the offices in North Nashville now, but between the Historic Society and the North Nashville Arts Coalition, we would gladly support just getting the word out and engaging residents about hey, that prospect and the opportunity to get some fresh trees for your yard or even for your church. So.
Hi, Jason. It's Fatia. How are you?
Good. I was hoping you chime in. I was gonna put you on the spot otherwise.
Yeah, thank you. My mother had a very large tree in her front yard that she had cut down in 2018. And then when I found out about Root Nashville, we planted a new tree there. So we did utilize the program. The tree is growing beautifully. So I do want to share that. And then also, I was going to bug you actually and ask you to describe what we'll be doing with the depaving program over on the side of the Jubilee Bridge in our soon to be Jubilee Park, Pocket Park. So can you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, that's an exciting project we have planned. If I would encourage folks to connect with Fatia offline if they haven't heard about this project or her, incredible organization. But NDOT actually owns a parking lot. If you ever drive DB Todd and kind of cross over the railroad tracks and you're passing Fisk, where it intersects with 19th, Avenue, there's this sort of recessed parking lot, and you drive by it and it's vacant most of the time. And before Fatia, it was often accumulating things like leaf litter, garbage, and she's been stewarding the land for a long time. But NDOT has agreed to allow us to enter a partnership where we can remove 3,800 square feet of the pavement to retrofit room for green space. So like Fatia is saying, it's going to be sort of like a mini parklet to help reduce surface temperatures and just show a reinvestment in that prominent area where so many people pass every day, both on foot, bike, car, bus. So it's an exciting project that's set to break ground in December. So I'll have to share out updates as we get them.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. We were hoping to have had it done earlier this year, but we are excited. I can't wait to finally get some sort of transformation out there. So we've got the artwork up that the Alicia has been working on. And then after depaving, then we'll have the pocket park. But it also, hopefully, in maybe the next couple of years or so, will be built out into a full park. So we are starting with the pocket park, and then we have to go ahead to pursue the full park build out.
Thank you, Jason and Fatia, for giving us some insight on that project. I'm super excited for us to explore, some village neighborhood planting captains. So, Jason, thank you for dropping that link in there. Excited to hopefully get some magnolia trees out in all the areas. So excited about what that could look like. I know we are approaching the ending time, and I definitely want to give you guys also the space to share things that are happening in your world, whether it's some events coming up that y'all would love to tell us about. So we'd love to use the last few minutes. If y'all have any announcements about anything that's happening that y'all would like to share, y'all are more than welcome to do so before we hop off.
Currently, my organization is running a promotion that if you purchase the book from us, we'll donate a book to the community. And so we're trying to do 1,000 books donated to 1,000 books purchased. And it will be directly on our website. And so we're also going to have it where you can nominate who you'd like the books to go to. If there's a particular classroom or a particular nonprofit or church group or anyone that you would like to see these books get into their hands.
That's amazing. Thank you, Lakia, for sharing that with us. Also, y'all, if y'all have any flyers, links to anything, if people want to have a little more context, please feel free to drop that in the chat as well. Anybody else need to come off mute? Want to come off mute? Okay, thank you so much, Jason, again for being able to join us today, sharing time, sharing information with us. We'll be sure to share out these links that Jason is dropping in the chat, just in case y'all would like to continue to learn more about the project, share it, send it to someone, an organization, a business that you think would be interested. Jason, I know you said that folks have until the end of August to get those signups in. So definitely we'll make sure that we're sharing that out in case someone is interested. They can get that in as much time as they can. So thank y'all so much for being able to join us. We will continue to see you all. Excited to see you all virtually on the call next week for our Wednesday session. It's going to be an Ask Me session with Kia Jarman, and we are super excited for y'all to join us for that. Of course, if you have any questions specifically that y'all would like for us to ask in real time, feel free to send them over via email to village@cfmt, and we'll see y'all online next week. I'll stay on a few minutes after the call in case anybody has any questions or anything y'all would like to talk to me about. But if all hearts and minds are clear, thank y'all so much for joining us today, and we'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all. Hope everybody enjoys the rest of their week. Get outside, get some sun.
Thank you, Edwin. I don't know if you're still on the call, but I'll definitely look into that Black Book Project.